Good evening. The East Yorkshire-based MEP Godfrey Bloom says he regrets any offence that's been caused by his use of the phrase bongo bongo land. Mr Bloom was recorded at a public meeting where he criticised the amount of government money spent on overseas aid. The UK Independence Party has warned him not to use those words again. However, in an interview with BBC Look North, Mr Bloom defended his controversial comments. Here's more from our political editor, Tim Ardell.
Lincolnshire's Police and Crime Commissioner has told a group of senior MPs today that he was right to suspend his Chief Constable earlier this year. Alan Hardwick was giving evidence before a parliamentary committee. It also emerged that the High Court case involving the suspension cost £50,000. Our reporter Amy Cole was watching the meeting, so no apology from Alan Hardwick then today.
Absolutely none. Alan Hardwick appeared before a meeting tabled by the Home Affairs Select Committee alongside two other police commissioners from West Yorkshire and Suffolk. The chair of the committee, Keith Vaz, asked Mr Hardwick if he regretted his decision to suspend his Chief Constable, Neil Rhodes, a decision that you may remember was described by the High Court judge in the case as perverse and irrational. It emerged that the cost of that High Court case was £50,000, which Mr Hardwick claimed was news to me. The committee asked him if he would pay the bill personally or if the money would come out of his policing budget. Alan Hardwick also explained that he's never once appeared before the Lincolnshire Police and Crime Panel set up to scrutinise the work of the Commissioner to explain his decision to suspend and then reappoint his Chief Constable, Neil Rhodes. Alan Hardwick, who has no prior policing experience, said he felt that the government could have given more support to commissioners, saying, "We're the people who decided we were going to grasp the poison chalice because we thought we could make a difference." City of Culture status could transform the economy of Hull and bring a lasting legacy. That's according to community leaders in Derry, Londonderry and Northern Ireland, the City of Culture 2013. Hull is one of 11 UK cities bidding for the prestigious status in 4 years' time. Well, let's go live to our business correspondent, Paul Murphy. Paul, it's a really big challenge faced by Hull, isn't it?
The Employment Minister, Mark Hoban, was reacting to news that 259 staff face redundancy as 7Seas looks to close its health supplement factory in the city. Staff are meeting managers today to discuss their future. Well, Amy Cole is live at the factory in East Hull for us this lunchtime. Amy, what have staff said to you there today?
Ed, it's fair to say that the staff have remained pretty tight-lipped. This morning I was speaking to one woman whose mother has worked at the factory for 15 years and understandably she's very upset at the prospect of losing her job. Now, a 90-day consultation period has begun. Hull City Council says it's seeking an urgent meeting with 7Seas. The company says it's having to make the cutbacks because of tough economic conditions. Well, earlier the Employment Minister said that the government is under no illusion as to how difficult times are.
Amy, the Minister said unemployment is down. The latest figures are out today. What do they show for the region?
Well, yes, indeed, it sort of reflects a national trend, actually. Unemployment has fallen by 9,000 to just over 250,000 in the Yorkshire and Humber area in the last 3 months. In the East Midlands, which includes Lincolnshire, it's fallen by 13,000 to just over 180,000. So positive news there, but very difficult for those who are on the front line of cutbacks.
Good evening. Plans to charge 20% VAT on static caravans have been dropped by the government. Thousands of people in East Yorkshire work in the caravan industry and it had been feared the move could have caused major job losses. It's now expected a 5% charge will be imposed instead starting in April. Here's our business correspondent, Paul Murphy. Well, the MP for Beverley and Holderness, Graham Stewart, joins me from Millbank in London. Mr Stewart, how much of a U-turn is this by your government tonight?
Well, I'm just delighted with this. We all know the mess the government inherited. They've got to challenge every area of tax. They've done that, but they've listened, and that's the big difference between the government that got us in this mess and this government. They've listened, they've heard the voices from across the country, from East Yorkshire in particular, and they've agreed that 20% VAT would be wrong, and I'm just thrilled on behalf of so many people whose jobs will now be safe.
But there might be a compromise. It looks like the 20% will be replaced with a 5% tax. Will you try to fight that as well?
No, I'm happy with that. I'm looking for a compromise with the government. Last Wednesday I met with the Chancellor, then the Prime Minister and then the Exchequer Secretary, and I was talking with them then about what would be acceptable. I also met with the representatives of the parks and the caravan manufacturers, and I think this is something we can all live with, and it shows that this is a government which does listen, even when dealing with the toxic financial legacy left by Labour.
Or does it reveal just how out of touch your party is with the electorate? I mean, this was not popular, was it?
Well, no, but then fixing a huge black hole left by the government that preceded us is not going to be all that popular, is it?
Playing football in a mobile cage in the centre of Grimsby. For these young people, it's the difference between keeping busy or getting involved in criminal activity.
Nice and easy, John. Yes.
Like the park around there here, we used to go on there for drinks and that, and when we've had a few drinks, go into town and just fight. But then I stopped drinking because Lee talks to me about drug courses and that. So I stopped drinking and stopped fighting because I think they're looking for trouble.
Over the past 5 years, the police, youth groups and North East Lincolnshire Council have been working in partnership to try to engage with teenagers. But the council says there's still more work to do.
It could mean street-based provision, it could mean specialist work, for example, in terms of child sexual exploitation. It could mean centre-based provision, it could mean holiday activities. It really does depend on what the evidence is telling us and what the need is.
Boxing after school. Chris Boyle, a PCSO, has spent the past couple of years trying to give young people a sporting focus in the small village of Witham St Hughes in Lincolnshire.
It's 33% reduction on reported incidents of antisocial behaviour and criminal damage, just using them two parameters. But it was a problematic estate, so it has helped.
According to national figures, the Lincolnshire Police Force area has one of the lowest levels of antisocial behaviour in the country. Improvement came when 61% of people told Lincolnshire Police that antisocial behaviour was their main concern. In North East Lincolnshire, crime involving youth-related antisocial behaviour has dropped by 60%. And in North Lincolnshire, youth reoffending rates, which used to be at 27%, have fallen to 4.9% so far this year.
Life on this North Lincolnshire estate has been tough for these women, but a residents' association set up to deal with littering and troublemakers is proving extremely useful.
You can walk about now without breaking your neck over beer cans. You can walk down the street without needles on the floor. And that's the way it was.
All agencies agree that if crime is reduced, it's ultimately a saving to the public purse. Amy Cole, BBC Look North, Lincolnshire.
Good evening. There are not enough ambulances on the road. That's the view of an experienced crew member at East Midlands Ambulance Service who says they're struggling to meet the government's response time targets. Earlier this year, the Trust was fined £3.5 million for failing to meet targets over response times for a third year running. A controversial plan to reorganise the service has been called in for review by the government. And on Friday, the head of EMAS left his job after less than 2 years in the role. Our health correspondent, Vicky Johnson, spent a night with the ambulance crews in Lincolnshire. Well, nobody from EMAS wanted to be interviewed today, but in a statement told us that the poor road network in Lincolnshire does make meeting targets a challenge. Andrew Percy is the MP for Brigg and Goole and is also on the Health Select Committee. He joins me now. After all that's happened in recent months, missed targets, government intervention and the boss quitting, how much confidence do you have in EMAS?
Well, I think naturally people's confidence has been knocked. I mean, we still need to remember that the majority of people who call for an ambulance receive an excellent service, but it is, very concerning to constituents.
Do you think that the 8-minute target should be abolished as EMAS can't seem to meet it?
I don't actually. I think that the target is necessary. The risk is that if we lost the target of 8 minutes, then rural areas in particular could suffer because, of course, the only thing that keeps ambulance trusts focusing on rural areas now is this necessity to meet the 8-minute target.
But it's the rural areas that are causing a problem, isn't it?
Well, the rural areas are always difficult, and I think people understand that if you live in a rural area, you're not necessarily going to have an ambulance round the corner, but the service we've been receiving has not been acceptable, and that's why there's got to be major change, which is why I think perhaps we need to look at whether the trust should be perhaps broken up.
And briefly, should Lincolnshire then have its own service and not have EMAS at all?
Well, I think we need to look at that. We need to consider whether or not a more rural focused service would be better, or perhaps look at joining with a neighbouring service.
OK, Andrew, thanks very much for your time tonight.